being a leader and being a servant. And what it all comes down to is finding out what your purpose is. A lot of people go through life never really finding out what their purpose is. Now, that's like being, I call it, a lot of guys I played football with, they were sorry, but they were big, and I call them big for nothing. I'm like, dude, you're big, but you're not fulfilling the purpose of being big. You can't block, you can't tackle. You just got all this big stuff for nothing. You're big for nothing, man. Big guy can't lift weights. You're like, man, you're big for nothing. So when you live your life, you have to ask the Lord, what is my purpose? I don't want to go through life and at the end of it, I say, now what was I here for? I'm sure God has some gifts in me, but did I let him use them? And so it's all about finding your purpose. And so when you talk about being a leader, there are many leaders down through the world. You got leaders, if you grew up where I grew up from, there were gang leaders, but that doesn't make them a good leader. That doesn't make them a godly leader. We had mob leaders. I mean, heck, Hitler was a leader, However, Hitler and all these other people who use their ability to lead in a negative way, they miss their purpose. They miss the real true meaning of being a leader. They all lead for vain glory, for self-purpose. That's what being a leader is not about. It has nothing to do with you. So a godly leader understands that being a leader is not defined by personal gain. I get no glory outside of the Lord and the church for being a Bible study teacher. I never ask for any money because I love to see what God is doing in the lives of the people. And not only that, I can't go out in the street and rock the fact that I'm a Bible study teacher. I get no clap. I can't go down and like, you know who I am? I'm the Bible study teacher. If anything, that would only encourage an enemy to beat me up. This dude teach the Bible study, let's knock him out. So my point is, it's not about personal gain. You are a godly leader. You're not saying, man, how can I use this gift to profit off of? So it's not about personal gain. It's not about popularity. It's not about money. It's about fulfilling God's purpose that he has put in you. And so that is what it really comes down to. God, why am I here? How do you want to use me to be a leader and to serve your people like you serve me? So your purpose in life is bigger than your personal needs and desires. It comes down to that. Any leader has to understand that their purpose in life has to be bigger than their personal needs and desires. You all know that I've done a lot of things, but nothing is more fulfilling and rewarding than being the Bible study teacher. All of this stuff is vanity. If I move out to California and become a famous actor, director, whatever, great, make a lot of money, have a good time. But at the end of the day, only what you do for Christ will last. All of those things fade away. Nothing that I can sit back in the middle of the night and say, I really impacted a life today because I produced a video or because I made $100,000. But when you can say, I watched someone repent, I watched someone be born again, that's the type of stuff that you say goes down in the record of eternity versus all the other stuff that people find themselves pursuing. So your purpose in life is bigger than your personal needs and desires. Now, I'd like to tell you a story, okay? I like stories. It's real brief. I'm going to try to make it. Some of you all know I'm an author. I wrote a book called Ralphie and the Woman in the White Coat. Now, that book was based off of my wife's research. But as I began to write the book, I realized that it had more inside of it than just an entertaining story for children. If you know anything about Sonia, she does medical research and she works with mice. And I went to see her one day doing what she does. And I was more of a disruption than anything. It was funny because I'm getting into stuff, because I'm bored. I'm opening up the liquid nitrogen. One time, I had a pencil about to lower it down into the liquid nitrogen. She, what are you doing? What? This is bad? She's like, you can't do that. So she takes me around the mice and she's working with these mice. And I thought to myself, I wonder what's going on in mice's head when they see her come in the door. She wears her white lab coat And I said, when these mice see you coming, they don't know who you are. They probably just be like, here comes the woman in the white coat, you know, and take off running. So I began to tell the story to the kids, and it ended up evolving into something bigger, and now it's a published book. But the story is about a little mouse named Ralphie, who was inside the lab, and he was being bred by this mysterious woman in the white coat. And she is breeding mice trying to find a cure for cancer. Well, along comes Ralphie, who has the cure to cancer, but he doesn't know it yet. All he knows is that all the other mice would sit around telling horrible stories about this mysterious woman in the white coat. Like old Mouse Johnson, he'd get up and he'd be like, I remember when I was taken by the woman in the white coat. Oh, it was horrible. And the mice would ask, what happened? He'd be like, oh, there were bright lights. And what else happened? There were needles. And what else happened? And I don't remember. All I know is she took my mouse hood. You know? And then old Mouse Einstein would get up and he would be like, I remember when I was taken by the woman in the white coat. And he would say, some mice would come back traumatized. Some mice would come back mesmerized. And some mice wouldn't come back at all. So now, all of these mice were afraid of the woman in the white coat. So Ralphie's mother and father said, don't worry about the woman in the white coat. This is what you do. When she comes in, you run to the corner of the cage, dig deep down underneath all the mice. She opens the cage, she'll take the mouse off the top of the pile, and you'll be safe. So the next day came, all the mice were eating their pellets, and the door opens. And in comes the woman in the white coat. They heard her footsteps. Run, quick! So all the mice ran to the corner, and Ralphie digs down underneath all the other mice. She opens the lid, takes a mouse, closes the lid, and leaves. So Ralphie's dad gets up and he begins to call out all the mice names. Where's old Mouse Johnson? Here. Where's old Mouse Einstein? Here. And all the mice were there except for one, Ralphie's mother. She was taken by the woman in the white coat. So that night, Ralphie cried all night. And his father said, Ralphie, don't you worry. He said, I will never let the woman in the white coat have you. And he goes to Mouse Einstein and he says, can you build something to help my son escape the woman in the white coat? So old Mouse Einstein says, of course I can. So he takes the wheel that the mice would run on and he forms a rope out of all the mulch. And he says, now listen, when she comes in, you get on the wheel, we'll pull the rope and it'll spin the wheel, shoot you out of the cage, you'll be free from the woman in the white coat. Next day came, the door opens. In comes the woman in the white coat. Everybody get to your places. So all the mice ran. Ralphie jumps on the wheel. She opens the lid. They pull the rope. The wheel spins and shoots him out of the cage all the way across the room onto the table. Now Ralphie had never been out of his cage before. So he looks back at the other mice and they're like, run, dummy! So he's like, oh yeah. So he jumps off the table, runs across the room into a crack in the wall. Now the woman in the white coat knew how important Ralphie was, so she alarmed. In come the guards. She says, listen, get that mouse back to me safe and sound. So they begin looking for the mouse, and they heard him in the wall scurrying around. Now Ralphie hears a voice in another room. Help me! Somebody please help me! So he looks through, you like that? He looks through a vent in the wall, and he sees a little teeny rabbit inside of a cage across the room. He opens the vent, jumps out, runs over to the cage, and she says, oh, please help me. I have been in this cage so long. And they do so many horrible things to me. One time they came in here and they shaved my fur. And a rabbit's fur is her glory. So he opens the cage and out steps the rabbit. And she says, my name is Sophie. And he says, well, I'm Ralph. And so these two now are going to get away from the woman in the white coat, but as they're about to leave, the door bursts open and in come the guards. So quick, they ran between her legs, the guard's legs, down the hall into another room. Now in this room, they hear another voice. Ribbit, ribbit. Ralphie says, shh. The voice said it again. Ribbit, ribbit. What's that? They go over to a cage, and inside of this cage was a frog named Franklin. They said, what can we do for you? He said, free me, free me. Said, what's your name? Franklin, Franklin. So they open the cage, out hops the frog. All three of the animals now are about to leave, but the door busts open. In come the guards. Now, they elude the guards, run out the door, down the hall into another room. And in this room, they begin to hear another voice. They go over to the cage. Inside of this cage was a monkey named Bobo. "Hello, my name is Bobo," he said. "I am the most intelligent monkey that has ever walked this earth. Please, will you free me?" So they open the door and out steps Bobo. Now, as they were about to leave, the door opens again. Now, Bobo says, "Quick, jump onto my back." They said, "Why?" "Don't question me. I'm the most intelligent monkey that has ever lived." They jumped onto his back. He climbs up the wall, crossed the guards, down behind the guards, out the room, and they run down the hall, and Ralphie says, "Quick, in this room." They go into the last room. And in this room, they hear a voice. "Bah." "What is that?" said Bobo. "Bah." They go over to the cage. Look inside the cage. Look, she's up here. She co-signing. She's like, "Bah." I feel you. Inside of this cage was a sheep named Shirley. Shirley had a problem. Shirley stuttered. Not only did Shirley stutter, but when she became afraid, she would pass out. So she says, "Please, will you help me? What do you want us to do?" My name is Shirley." So they open the cage. Now, when they opened the cage, before she could tell them about her other secret, the door burst open, here came the guards, and when she saw him, she says, "Oh my goodness," and passed out. Now, all the animals grabbed her by her wool, and they were trying to drag her down the hall, but she was heavier than all the other animals, so they were going slowly, and the guards were closing in. Now, as the guards were getting closer, Bobo had an idea. "Quick, when I say so, jump onto my back." What this back thing, man? "Trust me, I'm the most intelligent monkey that has ever walked this planet." So as the guards got closer, Bobo pulls out a bright yellow banana, and he says, "Watch me give these guards the slip." He eats the banana, throws it on the ground, animals jump onto his back, up he jumps, grabs hold, they slip on the pill, down the stairs they fell. Now, all the animals were free to leave the woman in the white coat in the lab. Now, as they were walking, they walked past a room where they noticed the woman in the white coat was in there talking to a little boy's mother. And she was saying how, "We understand that your son has cancer, and we had the cure for your son's cancer, but it was inside of a mouse, and the mouse escaped. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about your son's condition." So all the mice stood outside the room, all the animals stood outside the room sadly, and old Sophie leaned over and says, "Well, come on, Ralphie, let's go." So all the animals walk out the door, and the door closed behind them. But they realized one animal chose to stay. It was Ralphie. The door closed, they looked back, he was standing in the door, sad, his little ears were down, his tail was between his legs, and they ran back and they said, "Don't do it, Ralphie, it ain't worth it." And he says, "I have to. This is my purpose. I was born to be the cure." And he turned, and he slowly walked into the room. The woman in the white coat picks him up, takes him back to his cage, and puts him inside the cage. Now, Ralphie thought that he would be killed, but the woman in the white coat instead reunited him with his mother, and she used the gene inside Ralphie to cure all these little children suffering from cancer. And they would come down and they would see the brave mouse who decided to stay so that they could live. And that is the end of the story. So now, you have a situation here where Ralphie had an opportunity to leave. He had an opportunity to be free until he realized his purpose. Once he realized his purpose, he knew that his purpose was bigger than him, bigger than his personal needs. So now, he discovers he was a leader by default, but once he found out the purpose, then he became a servant. He knew his gift was put inside of him to serve others, not just for him. And that's what being a leader is about. It's not just about leading, it's about using the gifts that you have to serve others. He knew that his gift inside of him wasn't just for him. It would do me no good to be a Bible study teacher in the house by myself. Walking around going, "Yeah, man, the book of Luke says," to the walls, to my dogs. "And the Bible says, Sophie, Caesar, did it bite you? Repent from..." I mean, it makes no, that does no good. So what happens is I understand the gifts that God has put in me is for you all. It's bigger than kids. There's many times that I really wanted to throw the towel in. Trust me. But something inside of me said, this is bigger than you. You have to get up, you have to go. So all you out there is desiring to be a leader, a servant. Understand that calling is bigger than yourself. All right? His gift had purpose that was bigger than fear. Bigger than freedom. My first time speaking, I'll never forget, my pastor said, "You ready tonight, Doc?" I said, oh man, my heart almost, if you've never had to get up and speak in front of a church, I ain't talking like a small group of your friends. I'm talking about the church, and they say, you up to, it is some of you, your whole day is ruined at that point. You ain't thinking about going to eat. You just sitting back like, I got to speak tonight. I mean, your mouth is dry hours before you even get up. You said, man, this is serious business, because you understand this is for the Lord. And I had to remember that the purpose, the calling is bigger than my fear. I had to rely solely on the Lord and say, Lord, let you do it, because that's really who's going to be doing the speaking anyway. So it's bigger than your fears. It was bigger than Ralphie's freedom. He understood his gift was to save lives, just like that's your gift. That's your purpose. As a leader, your purpose on this campus is to impact lives. When I went to campus, I wasted 4 years before I got saved. And I impacted lives, but in a negative way. I really wish that I'd have got saved my freshman, sophomore year to be able to impact lives in a godly way. So your purpose here is to spread the good news of the gospel. It is to show the love of Christ. It is to leave people feeling a little better after they meet you than before they met you. And it is to look for opportunities to be a servant to somebody just like Christ was a servant to you. Think about how patient the Lord has been with you. Think about how kind he's been, how much of a counselor he's been to you. All of these things, if God has been that to you, then you want to be that to someone else. So a leader, in a sense, is a servant. Most people think that a leader is at the top of the pyramid. They think the job is just to sit back and tell everybody else what to do. But Matthew 23:11 says, "But the greatest amongst you shall be your servant." It has nothing to do with you sitting back and dictating as a leader. Jasmine, when we came in here, when I look at protocol, my pastor, he outranks me, and I honor his position. I honor Sister Stevens, who she is, her position, and I understand rank. I understand all of that. And you came, and what you did, you're the Bible study president at this point. You could have easily delegated and said, somebody go and get the plates for pastor and all of them while I just quarterback it. And you were like, let me go and get that. And many of you all did just like that. Can I get you something? Can I do this? That shows that even though you have a position to where you can go, well, maybe somebody else should do this. True service is saying, let me do it. I would love to go to a presidential election where Obama, or wherever the president is, brings me some water. Everybody's serving the president. It'd be great if you go, are you enjoying yourself? You want me to go get you some water? Really? So really, as you get exalted, look at Jesus. He washed the disciples' feet. And John the Baptist was like, man, I shouldn't even be able to deal with the latches on your shoes. And yet he humbled himself to serve the people, to show that leadership is about service and not just delegating. So now, as we close, it says, Jesus is the ultimate leader and servant. He is the ultimate. He is the example of being a leader and a servant. He led his disciples with wisdom, power, integrity, yet he served them with his sacrifice. You cannot be a leader without understanding you must make sacrifices. Leaders must be able to make sacrifices in their lives for the purpose that God has put in them. And Jesus would. Now, if you think about this, Jesus, I'm sure, would have rather lived. In fact, he said, I'd rather this cup would pass. But look how he responds as a leader and as a servant. He says, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. And so that is what it's really about if you want to be a leader and a servant. Look at Paul. Paul, I'm sure, would have loved to have been an old man, died quietly in a nice room around his friends after making lots of money as a tent maker. But instead, he chose to go to Rome, knowing that he would be put to death. So he knew that his purpose was bigger than his will. All right? In my closing, you're not here on this campus just to get a degree, to party, to have a good time, and all of that stuff. I know that's what you thought when you came. When I went to Miami University, I had a mission. My mission was to wreak havoc. You know you're in bad shape when you go, I'm about to go up there and tear this joint up. I didn't say I'm about to go up there and get a 4.0. It wasn't, none of that came out of my mouth. I was like, I'm about to go up there and leave my legacy. I'm a party every chance I get. I'm a riot. I'm gonna do all that stuff. And I didn't know my purpose. I thought it was just to go up there and have a good time. I thank God by the time my senior year came around, he saved me and showed me all of the time that I wasted up there pursuing my own desires, I was a leader, but not a good one. Then when he saved me, I realized that I wasn't on that campus just to kick it and party, but it was to impact other people's lives. By walking in your purpose, you will be a leader and a servant in your own domain that God puts you in. So now understand, if it's on campus, you're a leader, you're a servant. In the classroom, in your family, around your friends, on a job, in your church, wherever God places you, allow him to use you to be a leader and a servant to whomever you impact. Final scripture, Mark 10:44 and 45. It says, and whoever wishes to be the first amongst you shall be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. None of us in here is above Jesus. Jesus was the ultimate leader. If he led and served at the same time, who are we to not follow in the same footsteps? So as God takes you forth in whatever he has for you, allow him to order your steps in his will. And by doing that, you can't go wrong. By doing that, you will find your true purpose. You will be a leader in your own right. And not only that, you will find that that gift is not for you, it's to serve everybody else. Amen? God bless you.